Incline my ear, oh Lord, and answer me. For I am humble and poor, I am needy. Preserve my life, oh Lord, for I am godly. Yeah, thy loyal servant, forever trusting of thee. Thou art my God, thy grace show love unto me. For to thee do I cry out all day. Glad in my soul, for me thy joyful sovereignty. Oh Lord, I lift you up, so please lift my tired soul for me. Thou art my joy, the greatest in the heavens and the earth, abounding in your steadfast love unto all who call on thee. Give you, oh Lord, to me my praise fall upon ye. In my day of troubles I call on thee. Since there is none like thee amongst the wondrous stars in the sky, and thy works will they be a crowning glory, God on high. We shall bow down to rejoice in your name, oh Lord, yeah. We shall lift our songs to voice in your fame and everlasting. Thou art my joy, the greatest in the heavens and the earth, abounding in your steadfast love unto all who call on thee. Give you, oh Lord, to me my praise fall upon ye. In my day of troubles I call on thee.
Oh my Lord, thou art a search for and know me deeply. When I creep or rise up, when I can march and know meekly, thou discernest my thoughts from the farthest of places. Thy art acquainted my thoughts and all my airs and graces. Before I'd even spoken, oh my Lord did see. Before I'd even known you, thou did knowest me. Whither shall I go from thy Holy Spirit? Whither shall I flee from thy Holy Spirit? I want to make my bed in thy graceful ways and be within it. I will live my life in wonders any way that you spin it. And if I take thy wings, I'm mighty, then thy hand shall hold me. And if I ever did say, let only the darkness cover me, thou didst knit me in my mother's womb to shine just like a star. And so wherever I may go, I know thy Lord will not be afar. Whither shall I go from thy Holy Spirit? Whither shall I flee from thy Holy Spirit? I want to make my bed in thy graceful ways and be within it. I will live my life in wonders any way that you spin it. Thy Lord is the greatest name, This is his eternal reign. How wonderful are thy works, all in his holy name. How wonderful are thy fireworks, all by his holy flame.
And truly, if the heavens are your heading, the Lord's grace your destination. Then remember whose is that spirit you came by, and whose holy name you possess. Say, here I am, Lord, I am willing, and in his grace you will be sent. Because revenge will take away from you, leave you empty. Whoa, whoa. Because higher than justice is mercy, and mercy leads to love. Yeah. And in the ending, in those final days, we all can stand up. Because mercy is higher than justice. Whoa, whoa. Yeah. Because mercy is higher than justice. Wait and see. Because revenge will take away from you, leave you empty. Whoa, whoa. Because higher than justice is mercy, and mercy leads to love. Yeah. And in the ending, in those final days, we all can stand up. Because mercy is higher than justice. Whoa, whoa. Yeah. Because mercy is higher than justice. Wait and see. Wait and see.
Good afternoon and welcome back, ladies, gents and Pikachus, to another Daily Corvid show. We're going to be continuing with our reading of The Art of War, the Chinese communist / Islamic hijabi war propaganda strategy which they're going to use in their attacks against the West, namely us, the children of God, Israel and the Christian nations. So yesterday, we went through the first 4 or 5 pages, which kind of set the scene. We learn a little bit about how they don't value honor in war. There's none of this head-to-head clashing, giving your opponent a fair opportunity to defend themselves. It's all about sneaking around in the shadows like a rat, jumping out of your hiding spot to stab someone in the back who you previously claimed was your ally or your friend. So with that in mind, we're going to carry on. First of all, though, I can already hear some people saying, Daily Corvid, why are you wearing shades when it's indoor and you have a light on? It's because I have a bad headache, okay? So I don't want to be blinded by my own studio lights. He's got a little headache. Does he want a little cuddle? I would like a cuddle if anyone wants to offer me one, but that can wait. We're going to carry on with our reading of The Art of War, starting from where we left off on page number 6. So, waging war. As for military operations, let us consider an army of 1,000 attack chariots, 1,000 heavy chariots, and 100,000 armored troops. All provisions for a campaign of 1,000 li. Now, li is like a Chinese word that means like a distance, so it's about half a mile. So provisions for 1,000 li means to push your army forward half a mile. How much is it going to cost you? So it's saying here it's going to cost you a lot just to be sat there, not moving forward. And then you're going to need even more in order to push forward. So I think the point they're trying to make here is that there's no point having your army sat there doing nothing if it's going to cost you money. So you need it to be costing the enemy money. That's where we're going with this. Allowing for expenses at headquarters and the front, the entertainment of allies and guests, the cost of glue, ammunition, and lacquer, and the chariots and the army of 100,000 men will require a daily expenditure of 1,000 jin. Now, jin is, they've added that word in. The original Chinese text doesn't say that. The original Chinese text says family gold or father's gold. So it's inheritance they're talking about. What they're saying here is when you're at war with someone, you want it to be costing them money, because the entire reason you're going to war with them is to take all that lovely money to add to your father's gold, you know, the inheritance you yourself are going to pick up. So I think that first bit sets the stage for this particular strategy. And this particular strategy is when you're waging war against someone, like we found out last time, you tell them that you're an ally, you tell them that you're a friend, and it's so that you can creep into their country and have them feed you and your armies, and you can use their charity to pay for your war. So you're telling them that you have no money, that you're a victim, you need their money and their charity, and you're patting them on the head for being so nice and charitable. But secretly, you're actually saving all that money up so that when you spring the gates, you can smash them and they will have paid for their own demise. Which I've got to say is very, very devious. It's not something I would consider to be honorable or moral, as it said in the first 5 pages. Morals are apparently the most important thing to this warfare. But that's how they see morals. Wasting your enemy's money on their eventual demise is moral, in the words of Sun Shi in The Art of War, or Sun Tzu if you're a Westerner. So we carry on. In waging war, victory is the prize, but if it's delayed, both the troops and the weapons are blunted. Besieging a city exhausts your strength, and a protracted campaign depletes the resources of the state. That's who you're waging the war for, you know, that you have enslaved and drained the resources of already. So the state's already poor. That's why you're going to war with these people you claimed you are an ally of. With your soldiers and weapons dulled, strength and resources spent, your rivals will seize their chance and rise up against you. Then, no matter how wise you are, there is nothing you can turn to your advantage. Thus, I have heard reckless haste in war, but I have never seen a wise delay. Nor has any state benefited from prolonging the wait for war. Only someone who understands the perils of waging war can also understand the best way of conducting it. So, let's go through that slowly. The first bit says, as for military operations, the best way to wage a war is to sit in your enemy's country, which you are going to take over, and eat of their food, round up their resources, befriend them, tell them you're an ally so that they give you their money and they don't stop you from preparing, and then save all the money up that they're giving you in order that you can pay for your eventual march forward when you try to take them over. And then it says, victory is the prize, and you don't want to delay it. So even though we're waiting in the shadows for our little, our opportunity to strike, how it's describing waiting in the shadows as not being a delay. It's saying even when you are claiming to be friends and you're taking this charity and you're saying, we're just your allies, we're just moderate, nice people, we don't really want to kill you. It's just a friendship tunnel. When you're saying all that stuff, It's actually part of the war. So you've already gone to war. That's the thing to remember from this, is by the time you're in their country, claiming to be their friend, blessing your friendship tunnels or whatever, you've already declared war. You just haven't told them. So each time they give you money, you're going, thanks, oh, you're so great. And then you're adding it to the war fund that you're going to eventually use to bring them to their knees and kill them. So whereas in this country, we blow a trumpet and we go, we're going to go to war with you, and we declare our intentions, and that's morality in this country. Not so if you follow the art of war. So the Islamic jihad, the hijab, I don't want to get demonetized, even though I don't monetize. I don't want YouTube's algorithm to be upset. In the hijab and the communist nations, there is no such thing as a declaration of war. There is only a declaration of victory or an eventual declaration of defeat. So that's what they're trying to avoid by saying, we're going to move into your country, we're going to pretend to be your friend, we're going to have you pay our soldiers to live in your country while they're plotting to kill you. And when we eventually move against you, you will have paid for the food and the soldiers that we're going to use against you. So that's what it's saying here by saying, if you have a massive army, 100,000 armored troops, you have all your vehicles, you have your heavy chariots, you have your provisions, and you're sending money back for the headquarters, because it actually specifies headquarters and the front, which is the enemy country. How that works is you have to convince the country that you are in, not only that you are friendly to them, but you're actually needy. You need this money. You're a charity case. You're definitely not a developed, strong nation. You're tin pot. You've got no money. Don't pose them any threat at all. So then while their back's turned and they're earning the money they're going to give you, you've got that opportunity to stick the knife in the back of their neck. And I think that is what we are seeing with the Islamic countries now, especially with Israel at the moment, because we know Gaza and Lebanon have been the beneficiaries of large amounts of resources and money coming in from Israel and, in fact, the UN-connected countries, Europe and America. We have been so quick to throw money at these guys for charity, pat ourselves on the head. Oh, we're such good little charitable souls. And now we are finding the fruits of that money being spent. It's money that has gone into a plan to overthrow our Western nations. So I think what we need to keep in mind is these are very devious people, despite the fact that they're going to claim that they're friendly to us, and it's us that's in the wrong. We're the warlike ones. We're the racist ones. We're the ones with the bad culture, with the bad religion. It's not them. They're lovely and moderate. They're only saying that so that we keep giving them money in this falsified guilt. It's almost like guilt laundering. It's like they're laundering their guilt onto us so that we pay them a tribute. Then they can afford to kill us. So we've got to watch out for this. And I feel like if we watch the news, evidence of this is on every single channel, every single day, especially in the news channels. For instance, today, the UN released a statement saying there's going to be a ceasefire in Iraq. And in Israel and Gaza. There's going to be a ceasefire. It's going to be a 21-day ceasefire where there's going to be not a bullet fired. And it's so that the civilians can run away. And I thought to myself, how can you have a ceasefire when neither one of the parties at war is at the table with you? And neither one of them has agreed this. And then I thought to myself, this is the strategy, isn't it? This is the deception of war. Who are they trying to convince here? And why? What's the benefit for them? Because we know there is not going to be a ceasefire for the next 21 days. As I'm making this video, as I speak to you now, and you sit at home listening, bullets are being fired from one side to the other. Missiles are being launched. The war is afoot right now. So there isn't a ceasefire. But I feel like the reason the ceasefire has been proclaimed falsely by the UN is to have heads turn away from the war and think, there must be a ceasefire then. Surely if the UN are saying it, the UN are totally trustworthy. They know what's happening. Why would the UN lie to me? It must be true. But we know it is not true. So we move on to the next page. A skilled general levies troops only once and transports provisions from home only twice. He brings equipment from home but forages from the enemy for his food. This is how he keeps his troops fed and watered. Provisioning an army at a distance is a sure way of emptying the state exchequer and making your own population into beggars. Now, what did I tell you? This is exactly what we can see. Gaza actually live in the Israeli borders. The piece of land which Gaza are now claiming as their own was originally a gift from them, from the Israeli government at the end of the 1947 conflict. So even though it's a gift from them, and the money that they were given to survive there, because they produce nothing, they produce no food, they export no goods, they don't have any schools or hospitals or anything that wasn't given to them by the Israelis and paid for in part by the UN, they only have gifts. And now they are saying, you know, we own this, so we don't want you anymore. And more than that, we're going to come and kill you all because you're racist, you're horrible, you're apartheid state, you're evil. So that's exactly what's being described here. The skilled general levies his troops only once, i.e., he pays his troops at the beginning. This is the stuff you've got to take with you. That's the rations you're getting. And then he says, get the rations and the money that you need from your enemies. And that's exactly what we've seen with Gaza and actually Lebanon as well. So now we are starting to see the fruition of that mistake, because they have become extremely well armed and strong. And now they pose a threat not only to Israel, but the rest of the Western world and the Christian countries. So he carries on. Provisioning an army at distance is a sure way of emptying the state exchequer. So that's true. If you have an army in a protracted psychological war, an information war, like which we have seen with the Islamic Hijab, the Gazans and the Lebanese, in order to pay for that, you are going to bankrupt your country. But we've already ascertained the countries don't have any money. That's the reason why they need to go to war. They want the money of their enemies. So if you break that down, if these guys win, they're going to bankrupt each place they win within, then they'll have to move on to their neighbors. And that is how we know Islamic Hijab and the idea of this caliphate that spreads out to cover all the other nations requires an enemy in order to eat. Because what do you think happens once they've taken over all the other countries and they've exhausted every single resource in every single country? Do you think they'll just go, oh, cool, 3-0, let's go home, lads, and not eat any food? No, they're then going to turn on each other and start attacking each other to take control of the last resources which are left. And so we know not only this book here, but also the Islamic Hijab from the Quran, their doctrine is a short-term view specifically for disposing of one's enemies. It doesn't look past the end of the victory. And it says in this book, victory is the sole purpose of the art of war. It doesn't think about peacetime after that. Doesn't think about making allies with your vanquished foes, because you're not going to allow them to survive past the end of the war. It only considers how you're going to kill your enemy. And then after that, it doesn't have any plan whatsoever. So we know from reading this, yes, it might be an excellent way of disposing of one's enemies, but once you've disposed of all your enemies, it is not going to prevent you and your entire population from starving to death with a lack of resources. And I think that is the reason why Israel must win this war, not just on a spiritual or a moral front, but these maniacs in control of Hamas and the other terrorist groups, because they are so short-sighted in their view of the world, they are more than happy to throw their own civilians, women, children alike, at the meat grinder, have them all die so they can be turned into a propaganda piece. And the reason they have no resources is not because they weren't given anything. It's because they don't produce anything, and the resources they have, they spend on killing other people, their enemies, who is virtually everyone. So we know from this and the Quran, Israel know, and the rest of us who read this stuff know, Hamas cannot win this war because it will be the end of the culture in that part of the world. And then they will spread to the West because they will have no food. Just like in China, they run out of food, so they attack their neighbors. These guys will run out of food and they will want to attack us, which is why we're going through this now. So we carry on. For your soldiers, anger must be the spur to killing the enemy, and reward must be the stimulus for defeating them. Thus, in a chariot battle, if 10 chariots or more are taken from the enemy, then reward the soldiers who capture them. Change the flags, standards, and the captured chariots and add them to your own squadrons. Treat the captured soldiers well and look after them as if they are your own. This is the tactic of using the defeated enemy to increase your strength during an invasion. Now, where have we heard this before? Well, let me remind you, the weapons and the armored vehicles that the Gazans are using, Much of it has been vultured from previous wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, where they had American stuff. When the Americans vacated the area, they went, right, we've won, let's go home now. And they just dropped all their guns on the floor and went home. The remnants of ISIS moved in to take control of those American weapons and repurposed them. And anyone who was left in that area who didn't go home with the Americans was quickly captured and converted into a spy for the Islamic State. In fact, that's why today we have many people who claim they are Israeli or Christians speaking up in defense of Hamas, despite the fact that their actions are horrible, horrific, and evil. And as we've seen, the end result of their war is virtually the death of modern culture. The death of our society will be if Hamas manage to win this war. And I think that's the way they have done that. They have forced these people through their own starvation into accepting their culture in exchange for food, and rebadged all the weapons that they vultured off the Americans after they left, and other forces that they have been, tangling with in that area. And now they are using those things against the people who once, owned those weapons. And it's the same with their missile systems. The missile systems they are using are largely vultured from the 1980s. That's why we know they're Soviet designs, remanufactured with modern tooling in China, and sent from Russia and China through the Middle East into the war that we see today. Let's carry on. Oh, sorry, I lost my place. Change the flags and squadrons on the captured chariots, add them to your own squadrons. Treat the captured soldiers well and look after them. This is the tactic of using the defeated enemy to increase your strength. So you can now see that in a war, winning alone is the only thing that matters, and there is no merit in prolonging the campaign for any other reason. A general who truly understands warfare controls the people's fate. He is the master of the state. Now, isn't that interesting? Considering when we went through the first few pages, the 5 points that you have to remember to understand this book, number 1 was morality. Number 2 was moral, 1 was moral compass. 2 was obedience to your commander and the protection of the people in your state. But now we are hearing, no, the military is more important than the state. In fact, the state cannot exist without the military having control. That's what this says. A general who truly understands warfare controls the people's fate. He is the master of the state. So the military who has invaded this other country pretending to be its ally in order to lie to them to get their money to pay for the war, they are the head of the state back home. So if this is to be believed, even though the other Muslim nations declare and claim they have nothing to do with Hamas, Hamas is the head of their governments. And that would make perfect sense why none of these nations have come out in defense of moral values. Why have none of these nations come out and decried the actions of Islamic State? They have never decried Islamic State. They've never decried Hamas. They've never said we shouldn't be raping and pillaging and lying and stealing. We shouldn't be attacking people in a racist fashion. We shouldn't be making false accusations and claiming that we are the ones under attack. No, they've never said any of those things. This is the reason why, because they want us to think that Hamas is nothing to do with them, when actually the leaders of Hamas are the leaders of these countries. They are the government for the Islamic world. And that is why we know they are communists, despite their denials. It's just Allah-flavored communism. That's interesting, isn't it? So we move on to the next chapter, strategic offense. The ultimate achievement is to defeat the enemy without even having a battle. That's the quote. So I think we're getting into the meat and gravy now. This is going to describe to us how these guys intend to beat the rest of the developed world with a smaller, less well-equipped army. Despite that, they say they're going to have total victory. This is how they're going to do it. Chapter 1. In considering the complete art of war, it is greatly preferable to capture a state whole rather than to have broken it up. It is better to capture an army whole rather than to have broken it up. And it is better to capture a regiment whole than to break it up. Therefore, to capture a battalion whole is the art of war. Using this principle, you can understand that winning 100 victories out of 100 battles is not the ultimate achievement. The ultimate achievement is to defeat the enemy before the first battle is waged. Now, you might be thinking, how can you win a war of 100 battles when you haven't even gone into one battle? Because what they are describing here is by the time your enemy realize they're in a battle and start getting their weapons ready, you have already taken over the politics, the social cultures of their country. You've convinced the people that they are weak and they need new leadership. And you have empowered your soldiers when they turn their colors and finally fly the correct flag and stop being your allies. The people are going to be so weakened and surrounded, they will immediately surrender. That is what this is saying. This is saying if Israel lose today and the caliphate will be set up, when they spring that war forward on the Christian countries, all the Muslims in those countries will therefore be able to freely admit that they actually back the jihad, the hijab, that they actually back Hamas. And that is another reason we know they are not willing to speak up against these evils. They won't say a damn word about this, how immoral and evil their brothers' actions are across the world. They won't say a thing because they're waiting for that moment where they can fly the actual flag that they believe in, i.e. not the countries in which they have moved to. And then we will be surrounded and we will have no choice but to surrender or die. And that's what this is describing. Win 100 battles without even engaging in one. The art of war. But like we saw in the beginning, I mean, let's go back to it. It said something about morals. I'm sure it did. What's the 5 things we have to remember? Moral compass, going to heaven. The general must be possessing of wisdom, honor, benevolence, courage, and discipline. Like we know now, this is brainwashing, because if it says this on page 1, how can you say your general possesses benevolence, courage, and wisdom when here you are saying we are going to plan to stab every single country in the world in the back after having those countries pay for us to invade them? And the reason we're going to be able to do this is through deception. And it's like, hang on a minute. You've deceived your own soldiers here. Now you're saying you're going to deceive the world in the same way here. So we know Allah, who is Satan, his plan is synonymous with this book. The spirit of this book is Satan. And that's why we know these guys, they may look strong. They may have strong rhetoric. You know, they may have the likeness of a leopard, the feet of a bear and the mouth of a lion, like the beast is described in Revelation. But when it comes down to it, their spirit is weak. They come in the arms of Satan. And for that reason, we must defeat them. And I fully believe that we will defeat them. And I just think this is weakness. If you can't say to someone, I'm going to war with you, and then approach them for battle, what does that say about your confidence of yourself? What does that say about the way you feel about your own morals? Nothing good. So anyway, we carry on. Siege warfare should only be undertaken if it is absolutely unavoidable. That's the quote for this page. So we know siege warfare is when you trot up to the edge of a city and you start bombing their walls. So you want to get your troops on the ground. That's what this is talking about. Ground warfare with troops on the floor, boots on the ground, should be avoided because you will lose. That's what these guys are saying. They know they're going to get whooped if they have a proper war with us, man to man. They will get wiped all over the floor and they will lose. So they have to do these sneaky, underhanded, lying, deceitful tactics, stealing money from us, begging for charity, claiming victim, calling us racist, laundering the false guilt onto us. They have to do this or they will lose. But it just makes you think, why do they need to go to war in the first place? Surely if they just came to us as friends, we're already giving them money, letting them come to our country. We're not offering them no war threat of our own. Why do they need to do this? What is the thing we're doing that upsets them so badly that they need to wipe us out in this hateful fashion, lying to us, stealing from us, pretending that we have a friendship and then planning to stab us in the back? Why? Why would someone do that? Well, in my opinion, this is not scriptural, it's not in here, this is my opinion, Daily Corvid opinion. The reason they're doing this, the reason they don't feel bad about these tactics, because they are under the brainwashing of the Quran. And they fully believe that our culture, our lives, our whole country, even though they live here and they partake of it, they're enjoying the benefits of it themselves. They believe it is evil. And in order for Allah's kingdom to take reins of the world again, the bounty of Allah is what he calls it. In order for Allah's bounty to go back to the arms of the Muslims, they need to wipe out the Jews and the Christians and the apostates, which is Muslims who have left the faith. So that's the real reason this is happening, the real motivation and purpose behind this being applied, and the war in Israel, all the wars in the Middle East are based on this fundamental doctrine. Muslims believe, because Allah tells them in the Quran, we are born of evil souls. Everything about our culture and lives is evil. And the only way for them to recoup Allah's bounty of the rest of the world, which we have stolen from them, is what Allah tells them. We never owned our countries. It all belongs to Islam. We stole it off them. The only way to reverse that and get everything back for Allah, thusly they can create the paradise with the mystical bridal virgins and all that stuff in, is by wiping out Jews, then Christians, then apostates, and spreading out the caliphate to cover the rest of the world. That's why they're doing this. They cannot do that in an open warfare because we will beat them, because we are better. Sorry, Muslims, if this upsets you to hear, we are better. We have better trained, better equipped armies, which are bigger. We have a stronger population, and we have stronger conviction in our morals. You wouldn't catch us hiding in the shadows like this, sneaking about in tunnels like little rats. No, we will say to you, we have a problem with you. We'll rebuke your evil in negotiations. When that fails, we will meet you in the battle of war, and we will declare war before you see us coming. You will expect us so that you can move all your civilians out of the way. What a shame you do the opposite thing when you see us coming. You put your civilians in the way. You give your babies and your women missile launchers and guns, and then you cry about it when they get killed in the thick of a battle. This is the most evil, obnoxiously evil, immoral, and disgusting doctrine you will ever hear. And that is how we know, if you are a believer in faith in God, this is not going to see a victory. These guys are going to get absolutely smashed into pieces. But in order that we can survive that battle and grow, we need to keep reading. So let's carry on. Thus, when deploying your troops, if you outnumber the enemy 10 to 1, only then should you surround him. 5 to 1, consider to attack. 2 to 1, split his forces, and if forces are equal, do not engage him in battle unless you absolutely have to. If you in turn are slightly outnumbered, evade his forces, and if you are heavily outnumbered, hide. A smaller force, no matter how determined, will always get beaten by a larger one. So if we think about that in terms of the current day, the Hijadi force of Hamas, we know they are a much smaller force. So that's why they hide in the shadows. They pop out behind you to kill you, steal some hostages to hide behind, and you'll never ever see them in open battle, because the thing they fear most is defeat. And in their own words, the best way to defeat these guys is to meet them in a ground war in open battle. So isn't it just curious how the UN made their little ceasefire statement today? If I didn't know better, I'd say the UN were almost supportive of the Hijab, trying to deflect the chance of this ground war and this invasion happening, considering this would conclusively, in their own words, lead to their defeat and a return to the peaceful world that we had before they popped up their ugly heads. Then we carry on. The quote for this page. We may say that to know yourself and to know your enemy will gain you a victory 100 times out of 100. So why would they be saying that? Well, I think what we're going to find out now, knowing your enemy doesn't mean knowing the favorite color of your enemy or like being friends with them. Knowing your enemy means what are the limits of their morals? How far are they willing to go? And how far over that would you be willing to go? Because the gap between those two things is the gap in which you can gain your victory. That's what this is talking about, immoral warfare. The army's commander is the mainstay of the state. If his support is solid, then the state will be solid. But if his support is flawed, then the state will become weak. Indeed, there are 3 ways a ruler can bring disaster on his own army. He can hobble his army by ordering advance or retreat when the time is not right. He may confuse his troops by interfering in a military organization. And he may dishearten his troops by meddling with the ranks and responsibilities without regard to the consequences. If they see an army confused and discomfited, the lesser lords and princes will take advantage and will begin to stir trouble within the ranks. This is called spurning a victory by disrupting the army. So interestingly, the way this is written is as if the general's speaking to his own soldiers, but this isn't going to be happening if you're applying the previous stuff. So my supposition is this is how you are supposed to encourage the enemy forces to behave. And the best way to do that is to insert your supposedly friendly, moderate guys into the armies of your enemies, knowing that you're going to spring the gates and kill them all later. You can put soldiers in their army and have them spurn trouble into those commanders' squadrons. So if we relate that to the current day, how many Islamic believers do you think is in the military, the US Army? How many Muslims are in the British Army? How many Muslims were in the Israeli army? These guys can now not be trusted. And that is a design feature of this doctrine. As much as we would like to believe that these guys are loyal to our countries, that's the reason they serve. And some of them may well be. But knowing that they have this strategy on the table and that they are using it, it prevents us from ever fully trusting them. And that is another reason why I say there is no way anyone, Jewish or Christian, can ever trust a Muslim when they have the Quran as their religious doctrine and this as their military doctrine, when it's completely based upon deceit, thievery, and backstabbing. So let's go through that again. He may dishearten his troops by meddling with the rank and responsibility without regard to the consequences. So that's exactly what we see. How many people made a video about the LGBT and women leading from the front and being in the front lines of an army? There was huge fuss made about it, a huge uproar. And the uproar mainly was coming from professional soldiers. The professional soldiers were saying, hang on, I'm all for equality, but in a battle, if I get shot and the person who has to drag my bleeding corpse off the battlefield is a 4'3" transgender man who is now a woman, who is on hormones to restrict their testosterone, how are they going to carry me, a 6'2" man, out of that battle? They're not even going to try. So that means I am going to be in danger of dying because this person isn't doing their responsibilities and has meddled with the rank and the understanding of what their responsibilities are. So that is directly what this is. And in fact, I can remember during that whole LGBT thing, most of those protests were indirectly funded by the Chinese Communist Party or parts of Syria who were promoting the hijab alongside it. And in fact, there were lots of Muslims at those protests. But of course, I'm just paranoid. You know, these guys are friendly. They wouldn't dream of doing that. They wouldn't dream of supporting this or the Quran. Of course not. So we carry on. The 5 keys to victory. Knowing when to fight and when to not fight brings victory. Knowing what to do when superior in numbers or when outnumbered brings victory. Holding officers and men united in purpose brings victory. Careful preparation to catch the enemy out unprepared brings a victory. And a skillful general given free rein by the ruler brings victory. These 5 together are the only true path to victory. Well, that's some strong rhetoric, isn't it? The only path to true victory is these 5 things. So let's go through them. The last one is a skillful general given free rein by the state. So once again, we see the state has rules that they have to follow. Like the UN claim that they have this International Court of Human Justice that everyone has to play by their rules. You're not allowed to use these weapons. You're not allowed to use these tactics. You can only invade when we tell you to. But these guys don't listen. They're not going to be doing that. And even if they were, we wouldn't know because we already know they are dressing up as us and pretending to be our allies. We're feeding these guys charities thinking they've got no money and they're peaceful while they are doing this behind our back. So, skillful general given free rein, i.e. not under the responsibilities of the UN or any state. This is a stateless paramilitary. That's what this is describing, like Islamic State or the jihadi forces, the hijabi forces. Then the next one is careful preparation to catch the enemy unprepared. Now, how could you catch an enemy unprepared when the enemy is a whole country with a, multi-million-dollar State Department, military, and, people that are not stupid, well-educated people? How do you catch these guys unawares? Well, you tell them you're friends. You tell them that you have no money. You tell them that you are incapable to act. And we know from earlier parts in the book, that's one of the strategies we've already gone through. When you are ready to pounce, you make out like you're incapable. So that's what they're doing now. And that's one of the keys to the true path to victory. Having a ruler which is not beholden to the UN, not beholden to any state or country, not beholden to anyone but this book and the Quran doctrine that they follow, and preparing to catch the enemy out by feigning incapacity, feigning that you have no money, feigning that you are just this small force, you're getting wiped out by the evil Jews and Christians, like you're not going to be able to last much longer. And then I think they've been saying this for well over a year. They said they weren't going to last months last October. But here we are almost a year later. Next week will be the 1-year anniversary. Not only have they lasted this long, now they're preparing for a war, a full-on, openly declared war. So we can see this is what the Islamic hijadis have been doing from the start. And the fact is, anyone who picked up on this at the time was whipped with the racist stick. But I think we can see now that was absolute nonsense. The only racists that we have now to deal with are the Islamic warriors trying to take over our culture through this deception. Holding officers and men united in purpose brings victory. So what is their united purpose, I wonder? Allahu Akbar! That is their purpose. It's the cause of Allah. The jihad is its own purpose. We know the jihad is Allah's cause. So that is the way they keep their troops united. They say, if you are following Allah's cause of the jihad and you want to wipe out the Jews and the Christians, then you are a good moral soldier. You'll get to the paradise. If you don't, off with your head, you're dead, and you won't get squat. Knowing what to do when both in superior numbers and when outnumbered. So we've seen this. What do they do when they're outnumbered? They grab hostages, hide behind them, and recess back to their little terror tunnels. Oh, sorry, Pope, the friendship tunnels. They recess back to their friendship tunnels with their, their guests. Let's not call them hostages. Let's not call them terror tunnels. Let's call them friendship tunnels. And let's not call them hostages. Let's call them friendly guests, just like the Pope wants us to do. So in the words of the Pope, when they are outnumbered, they escape back to their friendship tunnels behind a wall of friendly guests who definitely aren't captive or being raped or attacked. And the reason they do this is so that it's difficult to pick them off. You're more likely to kill a hostage than you are the guy holding it, or both of them. And that means they can then propagandize you by saying they're evil, they kill women and children, they kill their own hostages. Oh, all they think about is war. Because you're in a friendship tunnel. Why would you be doing anything like that when you're in a friendship tunnel with your guests, your friends? That's the propaganda campaign that we're up against. So that's the first 3. We've got 2 more left. Knowing what to do when outnumbered was that. Knowing what to do when in superior numbers is the most important bit, because I think we can tell at this point, in most countries in the world, there is starting to build up a rather worrying majority of Muslims in most of the main countries and cities. Certainly in the UK, we have a lot of Muslim majority populations in Leeds, Manchester, in London, in Southampton, pretty much all over the country, in Wales and Scotland the same. And even though these guys pretend, oh, no, we're just cultural Muslims, mate. Yeah, we don't really believe in any of that stuff. We're definitely not hijadis. Nah. We know what they are doing is waiting for that call to war. And then they will spring their real flag and we will be surrounded by them. So that's what they're doing. They're knowing what to do when they're outnumbered, i.e. hide in their little friendship tunnels with their little guests, or pretend that they're actually not interested. Like the dog, when he wants to eat something off your plate, he's got one eye on the food, but he's looking this way to say, oh, I'm not watching your food, mate. Yeah, you can look away. It's totally safe. That's what they're doing now. And the final one is knowing when to fight and when not to fight. So maybe they haven't mastered all 5 of these, because I don't think they figured out when to fight is never, because you are all going to get completely destroyed. And when not to fight is now. Turn back, jihadis. Honestly, I know you're not going to listen to this, but really, if you valued your own survival, you would turn your armies back and you would get the hell out of harm's way, because we've seen what happens when these kind of things happen. This is not the first time Hijadi army has attacked Israel. How many times in the past? It's like every 7 or 8 years, a Hijadi Islamic army decides it's going to attack Israel, and every single time they get wiped. Then they whinge about it and say it was the evil Jews, the evil Christians, the world is racist. In fact, I can remember Abbas Mahmoud, or whatever his name is, like the PLO guy, going on TV and saying, the deaths of the Gazans is the world's fault. It's the world's responsibility. And I'm thinking to myself, what? It's not yours, but it's everybody else's on earth. This guy is irresponsible. No, he's not irresponsible. He was doing this. He was making us feel guilty to get money in charities going in, to make us more susceptible to accepting his hijadis as citizens of our own country, giving them houses, giving them jobs, giving them money, making friends with them, telling our secrets to them, letting them get organized. Meanwhile, they are planting spies in our armies, taking the charities we give them and using them to run interference to pull us out of position, confuse our commanders. And now we are seeing how that is going to go, because we are going to have these guys in a full war pretty bloody soon. So that's why, even though it's not the most interesting book ever, I really feel like if we learn these now, all the people who are denying this is going to happen, claiming, oh, no, it's paranoid. Nah, they're just friendship tunnels, mate. You know, like the Pope. Anyone who supports the Pope or that view, you're going to get a lesson. Not from me. These guys are going to teach you a lesson. But anyone who knows this and listens to these kind of things and learns it, we will be prepared and we will see the knife coming when they are coming to stick it in the back of our necks. And we'll see it coming and be able to get it or, you know, block it and move out the way, whatever, in terms of our country. So we go to the next page. So we start a new section, deployment. This is going to be describing how they roll out their forces without being detected, because we know they're still not admitting. Remember, even though this is military strategy, they are still claiming in this book that they are allies and friends of ours. We're still feeding them. We're still clothing them and housing them. They're still in our country pretending that they're friendly with us. But they are deciding when a good time to spring the fight on us will be. And as we know, that will be when they have surrounded us 10-1 and we're completely disorganized. So, deployment. The great generals of old first ensured that they make themselves were beyond defeat, and then they waited for the enemy to make themselves vulnerable. So the great generals of old, you know, the famous generals like Sun Tzu, the fictional one, or the real ones, what this is saying is the way they became famous and won all their battles, you know, their famous battles of old, the reason they did that, they waited until their victory was certain. They didn't attack too early. They didn't wait too late. They waited for that precise moment where all their troops were lined up, all their ducks were in a row. The terrain ahead of them was easy, and the terrain in front of the enemy was tough. The enemy was out of position and starving, and the light levels were dropping, so it was nighttime. That's what this is what it's describing. And then when it says they waited for the enemy to make themselves vulnerable, that's exactly what we're seeing now. Israel have staunchly been against this, like they're not having any of it. But the UN saying there's a ceasefire when there's not. Western countries umming and erring about sending aid to Ukraine or to Israel to help these guys defend their borders, making out like there is a two-state solution, there's a ceasefire, there's peace on the horizon, we just need to hope for it. That's us showing our weakness. These guys are not interested in a two-state solution. Neither are they interested in a ceasefire. We know from their doctrines, the Quran and this, they're just saying that. They are just telling us that so that we go, oh, okay, maybe you don't want to fight. And we drop our hands. And when you drop your hands, bang, you're going to get clumped. I know that guy that attacked me, I was defending myself very well. And I let go of my guard for 2 seconds, and that's when I got clumped. So, you know, I had that massive bruise on my face. That's how I got that. Had I not dropped my hands, I could have caught that and I would have been less injured. And that's what we're seeing now in our country. They are tricking us with a friendly word to drop our guard. And as soon as our hands are down, bop, we're going to get it in the head. So that's what this is describing. Thusly, we can say, although you have it in your own hands to place yourself beyond defeat, you cannot of yourself bring about the defeat of the enemy. Whilst you are unsure of victory, defend. But when you are sure of that victory, attack. Defense should indicate that you are not in a position to defeat the enemy. Attack that you are even stronger than you need to be. A skillful defender digs himself in deeper than the 9th level of the earth. We'll go through what that means. A skilled attacker falls on the enemy from above the 9th level of heaven. And in this way, you can protect yourself completely and ensure total victory. So a bit of a long-winded one, but let's go through it. The reason they're saying below the 9th level of hell and above the 9th level of heaven, they're just saying out of the view of a mortal man. That's what that means. So when they're saying in order to defend yourself, you need to lay lower than the 9th level of hell, they're saying you need to completely hide away, and you need to hide away your interests, and you need to make sure the word on the street is that you're not there anymore. So this is talking about spying operations, fraudulent identities and spying. So let's go through it word for word. Whilst you are unsure of victory, then you defend. So that's what they're doing now. They're unsure of victory, which is why they haven't tried to invade us outright, because they don't have sufficient numbers and they don't have public opinion. So that's why we're seeing the UN make these ridiculous statements about ceasefires, and why BBC every single day will tell you Jews are evil. Oh, the poor Palestinians, they're just heroes. Even though we know that's completely wrong. Defense should indicate that you are not in a position to defeat the enemy. So that means if you're defending, that's giving away that you are not strong enough to attack. That's the only reason why you'd ever defend, is because you physically are unable to attack. So what it's actually saying there is you should not be defending for too long, because it's a waste of resources. They're saying while you're defending, you're thinking about when's a good time to turn this into attack. And that's exactly what we're seeing in Israel and, in fact, in Ukraine. At first, it was Russia on the attack. Now they have stopped it. They're defending because they're weak. But if they had enough resources to keep attacking, they would have kept attacking because they want that victory. But it just so happens Ukraine, the surprise package, a bit like Oleg Usek, has done pretty well and has beaten them back. And it looks like now, God willing, Ukraine are going to get a victory. And actually, Russia look like they're under threat. And it's the same with Israel. Everybody thought last week, oh, yeah, little Israel, they'll get beaten by all these Muslim countries. Not so sure now, though, are we? Because what's happened is that defense has outlasted the resources. And now Israel have stopped supplying them those resources. So they have to go begging to the UN, begging to the European countries, begging to America. And it just ain't happening for them. Then we get to the last sentence. A skilled attacker falls on the enemy from above the 9th level of heaven, i.e. from a place that you can't see them from. And in this way, you can protect yourself completely and ensure a total victory. So the conclusion of this is something that is constantly evolving, but you shouldn't be waiting too long to apply that finishing strike. When you are hiding behind your hostages, your guests in your little friendship tunnels, when you have amassed the funds of your enemy because they're giving you charities thinking you're friendly, don't become comfortable on it. Never let yourself get comfortable and become friendly with your enemy, because then it is your ranks that are going to be disorganized. It will be your army that cannot sustain itself. Never forget that your enemy are there to be killed by you. That's what this is saying. That's what we've seen. Have I missed a page? I think I have. Right. Being prepared for all circumstances is also what ensures a certain victory. So we're going to go through a couple of provisos now. This is the ins and outs of how that last page is going to be physically, rolled out in reality. To see a victory when it is already clear to all by no means is the height of excellence. A victory that is acclaimed by all and sundry is not the greatest of victories. It takes no great strength to lift a feather. You don't need keen eyesight to see the sun, nor keen ears to hear thunder. The great warriors of old not only won victories, but won them with ease. Because their victories were achieved without difficulty, they did not bring themselves great fame for their wisdom or respect for their courage. They only brought victory. Wow, isn't that poetic? So what this is saying is, the way that you are going to get victory, O Hijadis, is not something that people are going to celebrate. When you get your victory in this way, you're either going to be lying about it to get that praise, or you're going to be hiding it. And that's another thing we see in the Middle East. How many times have we heard propaganda or seen propaganda videos of these Hamas guys winning great battles, winning great victories? Only when you fact check them do you realize most of it's made up, or it's from a different place in the world or a different year or something. It doesn't relate to the current conflict. And we hear so often that Israel are getting destroyed and Ukraine are getting destroyed. Everything's going terribly for them. No, it's not. It's just propaganda. That's what they're saying here. The way in which they claim that they are going to win this war is such a sneaky, underhand, immoral and evil tactic. They're not going to be shouting from the rooftops about how brave and great and courageous they were. They're not going to be saying anything. They're going to have to invent a story about it because it's going to put people off liking them. That's what this is talking about. Being prepared for all circumstances is what ensures certain victory, for it means you are fighting an enemy who is already beaten. That's evil, isn't it? So if your enemy's already beaten, O Hijadis, why are you fighting them at all? Oh yeah, that's right, because you're trying to kill us all, because even though you deny it, your Quran stipulates that Allah's bounty can only return to you when the head of the last Christian and Jew is bleeding out on the floor. So even though you claim that you're only wanting peace, it's a defensive jihad, honest. Now we know. You've already beaten us. We don't even want to fight you. We're trying to be friends with you, but you need to kill us. So this is further evidence that the war against Israel is not over a Palestinian state. It's not over territory. They physically want to kill all the Jews, and then they physically want to kill all the Christians, and then they physically want to kill all the apostates. It's a convenient starting point to get Jerusalem as the core of their caliphate. That's why they're doing it there. And obviously, oh yeah, and Allah's prophecy that hasn't come true yet, it's completely wrong. If they can take over that place, they can rewrite history, as this was saying. You're not going to be telling people the truth about how you won because it isn't courageous or prideful. It's disgusting. So when they take over the Jerusalem, make the caliphate there, they can just kill everyone who was a witness, which is what we know they're going to do, what they've described here. And they can rewrite history and say, it was a great battle. We were outnumbered 100-1, but Allah appeared with his 80,000 angels and he caused the victory against the infidel. Which, funnily enough, is what it describes in the Quran. That is literally how it is described. Muhammad appears, 80,000 angels. Oh, no, it's 8,000. 8,000 angels appear. No, 2,000 angels first. Then they don't win. So another 2,000 angels appear. They're still not winning. Then Allah sends 8,000 in total angels, and then Muhammad and his 8,000 angels finally get the victory. That's his prophecy. So that is literally what this is describing, even though it's not in the Quran. This word for word equals the Quran prophecy of Allah of how Israel will be defeated. In their delusional little terrorist minds, obviously that will not happen. Then we finish off the page. In the art of war, first comes scoping, looking out for people, then measurement, assessing your enemies, then calculation for balancing, i.e., how many soldiers do I need to send to stab this guy in the back without being seen, and finally, for victory. The earth is the basis for scoping, scoping the basis for measurement, measurements the basis for calculation, and calculation the basis for balancing, and therefore victory. So what they're saying is, you can't do one until you've done the previous one. So you need to scope out the enemy, i.e. what we went through in my Quran videos about the 3 stages of jihad. Remember, the first stage was placement. That's what they're talking about here, scoping. Get your guys in position to watch the enemy. Stealth jihad. Then you start turning the services and the companies and the military of that country against them, to argue internally so that they support you. Finally, you go for public opinion. Then the last stage is the open jihad, when you've turned all those things to your advantage, when the enemy are disorganized, confused, and demoralized, when you surround and outnumber them, then you go in with the open jihad and shout, Allahu Akbar, we're going to remove all your heads with these swords. That's what they're talking about here. But it even says, if they can't do these steps precisely and in order, then total victory is not assured. So they're giving away a chink in their plan here, aren't they? All we need to do is interrupt one of these 5 stages and then they can't get their victory. Even the last stage, even when they're balancing their weapons ready to come and kill us, if we disrupt them at that point, they will not get a victory. So once again, we see the weakness of this plan. Even though the rhetoric is very strong, it sounds very good, and they keep talking about this total victory, they've already beaten us. The rhetoric is there to convince whoever's reading this that they are not in a hopeless suicidal war mission that's going to end in their deaths. That we know, if we read between the lines, there is so much riding on the planning of this not being interrupted, it's virtually impossible for them. What a shame they won't figure this out before they are, before they see their eventual defeat. But I hope they do. I really hope they do, because they don't need to die like this. That's what's going to happen. They're going to get wiped out, and this stupid plan doesn't come to fruition, and they meet on the battlefield the English, British, European, and American troops in battle alongside the Israeli troops. They are going to meet with death. But they don't have to. They could at any point turn back and realize this is not as good of a plan as you have been sold, hijadis. But anyway, that's the end of today's reading. It's only going to be a short one because I want to go through some things. So, regardless of which country you live in, you have probably noticed that there are lots and lots of Muslims, and no doubt I will be called a racist for having read you this book, made this video, and related this to the Islamic hijadi movement. But realistically, if they weren't pressuring us with this false guilt laundering, calling us racist, saying that we're the warlike ones, saying that our Christian culture is the warlike one, saying that their poverty and their disease and their warlike nature is our fault, if they hadn't been brainwashing our nation like this, using our own media against us and paying off our politicians, Keir Starmer and the such like, how likely is it that we would be at war if they hadn't have done that? How likely is it that we would have complete peace all over the world had they not had this weird little jihadi plan and this thing on the go? Now, I can't say for sure, but I would wager between you, I, and the gatepost, it is very unlikely that we'd be at war at all had they any admiration for our doctrines of peace, living together, forgiving your neighbors. So we can see, despite the fierce rhetoric, despite the claims that they're going to get total victory, all you need to do is follow these 5 things and know these 5 things and then not have any morals and completely obey your commander as if he was God and then die martyring yourself to the cause of the jihad. That's all you need to do. That's all. And then you'll get total victory. All we need to do is be patient and wait for them to reveal that their plan fucking sucks, if you'll excuse my French, like we've just read. They need our resources. They need our support. They need us to fund them and house and clothe them. They need to live in our countries while they are doing this jihad. Right up until the last moment when the last Jew or Christian dies, they need our support. Otherwise, the plan fails. So that means if we stop giving them their support, i.e. we refuse to bow to this brainwashing culture of racism and you're warlike and everyone needs to be equal when they're not, i.e. their cult of Islam is not equal with Christianity, it just isn't. It's not equal with atheism, it just isn't. It's not equal with anything else. It's the only thing in the world that demands the death of the entire planet for Allah's warlike rage to be sated and for the paradise to exist. It's the only one. So if we say no to this communist propaganda, this Quran propaganda, and we stop giving them our support, we stop giving them our money, we stop tolerating their immoral, evil positions and behaviors in our countries, and we openly speak out against them regardless of the risks, then we can defeat them now before that battle even comes to fruition, because like they just told us, they intend to win 100 battles without drawing a sword by making sure we are so weak that we surrender at the sign of battle. How does that make you feel? Tell you how it makes me feel. It makes me feel very angry. To think that these guys look upon me and my country as cowards when we have been so charitable and friendly to these guys, and they've just been saving up the money that the charities have given them the whole time, planning to stab us in the back and then burn our bodies and declare a victory for Allah. Not only that, they think us cowards. If we have any sense in this country and in America and in Europe, today will be the last day we give any of these guys our support. The very last thing we should say about these guys is God help them, they're going to get what they deserve. And they absolutely will. So that's the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed that and you learned something. God bless you all. And I will see you, lovely people, in the next one. Bye now.